raging diecast. We live in the dream, tiny cars, but the part of the team reviews, releases, exclusive views. Raging diecast is breaking the news. Breaking the news.
What's going on, everybody? Raging Diecast here with another podcast episode. And I tell you what, this is one that I have been so excited for. Man, since the first podcast episode, I've been talking about the company, and you see the thumbnail, you already know. I have Vincent, the CEO of GreenLight Collectibles. And I tell you what, I am very, very excited to have him on and to discuss Greenlight. Vincent, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. It's actually, I think it's the first time I have a podcast interview or maybe even a conversation. I've actually never have things like this in the past, so it's pretty new for me.
Well, I'm absolutely honored that I'm the first. Hopefully, I don't completely mess it up, and hopefully there is many more to come. And I'm sure there will be, because I've seen some sneak peeks of what's coming in the pipe, and it's getting me pretty excited. But before we get into that, let's start with you and how it all started. Like, did you start collecting? What age did you start collecting? How did that morph into you being the guy at Greenlight?
Okay, so I think maybe I will start a little bit about myself. I was actually a plastic model kit builder, like a modeler, since I was 9. Basically, the first model kit that I picked up was Japanese famous brand Tamiya, which is one of my favorite brand. And I still remember the first car that I built was the 1/24 scale Mercedes-Benz 500 SL. It was a convertible. It was a beautiful car. So that was 9 years old. That was the first time. I still remember when I messed up the windshield, putting on the windshield, and I spilled glue on the glass. And I was trying to rinse it off with water, but didn't realize that the chemical didn't work. I messed up the windshield, and I was trying to ask my mom. I said, "Mom, can you buy me another one?" Because I was born in November. Scorpion, kind of like perfectionist. So that was really upset, like I have the whole windshield with the whole splash of glue over it. Was trying to ask my mom to buy me another box, but my mom refused. So that was how I got started, and then obviously I was born and grew up in Hong Kong until 13 when I moved to Canada. So in Hong Kong, I would say it was a privilege for the Hong Kong boys, to have access to a huge amount of toys and hobbies. So there is a street in Hong Kong located in a place called Mong Kok, and which is not far from where I used to live when I was a kid. And I used to go there during weekend. And it was like, I think it's a beautiful place, There were all kinds of hobby shops. There were Gundams, there were scale model kits, there were military scale collectible, there were radio control car. It was just a wonderful place, Yeah. It's just candy shops. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you started up messing up windshields on model kits, which I've done on customs, and it's so aggravating. You get the paint all right, and then the windshield gets like a thumbprint of super glue or something. Yeah. I've been there. I've done that. It's terrible. So you started with kind of the modeling, and how did that kind of morph into diecast and then eventually Greenlight?
Well, I've always loved cars since I was a kid. I used to collect car magazines, and every time when I go out with my dad, when we go past there's little booth outside the restaurant in Hong Kong. So in the booth, they sell all kinds of magazine, newspaper, right? And usually I usually pick up car magazines. Car magazines is my favorite. And I like reading the stories. There was always a section about building models and all that. And I used to live very close to a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Hong Kong. So before I go to school, I would be waiting at the bus stop. And then that was actually across the street from the parts and service in Mercedes-Benz. And at that time, they used to have display of diecast model. It was actually 1/35 scale. It was not even 40 scale. I think probably 43rd scale was started by Paul Lunk, if memory serves correctly. That was in the early 90s. And that I was talking about, my first exposure to diecast was about 1991. My very first diecast car was actually 135th scale, Mercedes-Benz 560 SEL W126. And that was the car that was on display and part and surface. So, you know what, at that time, like, again, my mom is a really good mom, kind of like spoiled me when I was a kid. And I said to my mom, I was like, if I do good in school, well, would you allow me to buy that? And obviously I I think there was some tests I score 100 or something. And then my mom was like, okay, well, I'll fulfill the promise. So she took me there. And then I just went in. I still remember the box. It looks like a container. And then when you open the side of the box, it feels like you are getting your real car. And I remember it underneath the car, the chassis, it says made in West Germany. So you can see how long that was. That was still not Germany. That was West Germany. But the entire car was made by diecast. It has open hood and smooth rolling wheels, open doors, open trunk. So that was kind of like the first time when I have my diecast car. That was actually the very first one.
So I'm already kind of noticing a theme. The first model kit was a Mercedes. The first diecast was a Mercedes. Are you a big Mercedes guy?
I would say for most of the people who grew up in Hong Kong would be either a JDM guy or a German car guy, because obviously those are the two major brands that import to Hong Kong. But then when I moved to Canada when I was 13, I got exposure to American cars. And at that time, at first I felt kind of strange. I was like, hey, so now we got Mustang, but I'm no stranger to Corvette, because I was telling one of my friends the other day, the first time I came across with Corvette was, when I was at the meeting with Corvette Museum yesterday. So we were talking about it, right? I said, how I heard about Corvette. That was actually from Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo 1, like many kids, I have Sony PlayStation. But in my Sony PlayStation, there's only one game, Gran Turismo. And we always started with when you start the game, right? Well, there's like $8,000 in your bank account, and the only cars that you can get is secondhand car shop, and then you go shop the car. And remember, then you got to go train your skills at Sunday Cup. And until then, you start making some money. You want to go for a better car, and then you start shopping around. You could go to British dealership where you can get Aston Martin, and then you can go to Japanese car. You can go to Nissan. You get like a R33 GTR. But then that time, I went to the American street to shop for American cars. And the two cars that really caught my attention, first of all, was the Viper, 1996 Viper GTS. And the other one is the C4. It's the Corvette C4 Grand Sport, blue body color with the white stripe. And being a kid at that time, I was like, wow, that car is cool, man. I like it, powerful. So after I moved to Canada, then I start to learn about what exactly is American cars and go to bookstore chapters, pick up Car and Driver. You start reading a lot about Mustangs, Camaro, and also Corvette. Yeah, and it was like that pretty much.
And you touched on something there that I actually want to touch on. So you have lived quite a few places, Hong Kong, Canada, and some others. How has that shaped kind of you in diecast? Are you looking at more than just the American market for diecast? Are you looking at the Asian markets?
I would say now with GreenLight, it has grew from kind of like a domestic US company and now become a global icon. So to my surprise, after we acquired a company, when I go to China and when I go participate in diecast event, I start seeing a lot of people. They said, well, I love GreenLight. I've been collecting GreenLight since the beginning of GreenLight, which is like in 2003-05. And yeah, I think GreenLight is now more than just US. And this is the reason why now I have developed a whole new range of JDM. And because if you want to do good in Asian market, unfortunately, like Ford, Chevy, well, the majority of them, or even Shelby, they don't export a lot of cars to Asia. This is the reason why they don't get to know a lot about American cars, except China. Because China actually, I know now politics issue, they have some argument, but over the past, they were in very good relationship. A lot of American cars were imported to China. So Chinese people are no stranger to Buick, to Chevrolet, so to Lincoln. Yeah. Well, my dad used to have a Lincoln when I was a kid. So I knew about Lincoln when I was a kid.
So I would say, I mean, even now, like it seems like a lot of guys, maybe my age or our age, I don't know exactly how old you are. We don't need to know, but they're leaning into the cars, kind of like. So the guys before us, they collected what they grew up with, which was like the hot rods, right? And then we're coming up, and it's like, it was Hondas and kind of that JDM scene. And it seems like the guys after us are maybe more Euro, like the cars they idolized are Porsches and things like that. So I think it's a great thing to see that you're kind of getting, and there's a spot for American motors. There's a spot for it, but it seems like the main collector base right now is, very JDM, very Euro. And it seems like from the sneak peek, and we'll talk more about it, that I saw of the releases at the convention you just did, which, by the way, I hope to make next year. I'm super excited for that. You're leaning into that. I saw some Subarus that you're going to release. I saw some Hondas.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. But before we do, I want to talk about a different line, which is the King of Crunch line. Is that something that you're content with? Is that something that eventually gets phased out? What does that look like? Does it do well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Kings of Crunch is one of the major line of Greenlight. And I think a lot of people have the misconception thinking that after we come on board, that we are going to do less with our original American topic, right? But that's actually not the truth, We're actually devoting a lot of resources to make the entire American Greenlight hot rod portfolio. And honestly, after I have got into the company and I spend a lot of time to study the company, I study the product, study the portfolio, study the casting. And it has just come to my attention that Greenlight actually covers a vast amount of topics. I'm not sure if you know how many product series Greenlight have. I have categorized with my colleague. Now we have strinked it down. So I said to them that do not grow anymore because you don't want to be jack of all trade but master of nothing, right? Well, you want to be focused on something. But having that said, Greenlight, I've concluded that Greenlight have 55 product lines. 55.
Wow.
And if you take some of them, like let's say Tokyo Torque. Tokyo Torque itself is already a line that contains only JDM car. So if you produce enough cars in Tokyo Torque, that's actually probably as big as some of the smaller branch. So basically, I think one of the issue with Greenlight over the past is they have covered so many topics, but there were not enough casting to support all these lines. So that's why it runs into some of the issues that you may be asking later on. It will be like, how come again, referencing back to Tokyo Torque, okay? The line have stopped it in Series 9. So there were no more release after Series 9. But there were 6 cars released for every 6 cars for every release. So 9 times 6 equal to 54. Out of the 54 cars that they have done, 17 of them are 510. This is how many 510 they have released. But you know what? You know how many times they have changed the color? Like it was just changing color. But collector, especially these days, having competition from China, they can make tools very fast and then they can create new casting very quick. So people want something different, not just change of color, Yeah. So even put myself into the shoes, a collector, you and me. Do you want to buy the same car over and over again, even though you like it that much, right? Well, you're not going to buy 15 of them, agree? Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I was just talking to someone else about an unrelated company, and they were leaving that company altogether because they just were like we're getting the same thing, just a little bit of a facelift or this or that.
Yeah.
And I think you hit it right on the head. Like, I can only have a color change so many times before you got to give me the next thing.
Yes.
One thing I'm interested in is, being that you're obviously well-traveled and well-lived in multiple places, do you notice any cultural differences with how people collect? Does the American collector collect different than the Chinese collector? And what does that look like? Or is it just collecting,
Yeah, I would say American collectors have obviously been collecting cars since the 60s, since the 70s, ever since the start of Hot Wheels or maybe even before Hot Wheels, there were different brands, but some of the brands no longer exist. But Chinese collecting society probably have only established in probably 3 decades ago, because given the political situation in China back then, at that time, they were talking about to survive. Okay. So collecting is kind of like a privilege, right? Well, the first thing is you got to get the basic living ready before you go into collecting. But obviously the Chinese collecting society have grown very quickly, very rapidly over the last 4 decades, because they grow with the economy, right? Look at the difference between 4 decades ago in China and today. There were day and night difference. So now they are collecting everything. Yeah. And then also given the technology advancement at the moment, well, in China, I would say ever since the evolution of iPhone, all those precise carving machines, when they phase out from making iPhones, start making every other stuff, our cars get better. The way how a diecast car was being made in the 90s, there were no scanner. They were just taking a bunch of photos. There was maybe a couple hundred photos at every angle. And then you put a wooden stick next to the object. And that's how you can get the approximate size. And then after that, when you send the pictures and send the documents to China, there are a lot of talented people. They would take clay. And then they would shape out, okay, the very old traditional way. This is the reason why the tools being made in the 90s, in the early millenniums, they weren't that accurate. That was just because that was coming out from the eyes of the sculptor. Yeah, so that's pretty much the reason why. But today, obviously, we can have 3D CAD files supplied by the manufacturer, okay? But most of the manufacturers have only retained the CAD file probably since early 2010. So anything before that, we still have to go locate the car to go scan it, if you want complete accuracy, which is what we are striving to do right now.
Yeah, and it is ever evolving. I mean, now people, companies are printing resin cars, which in my opinion is not the same. It doesn't have the weight. It doesn't roll. There's some things with that, but it's just amazing. One day we're molding with clay, and the next we're just printing it from a little machine with some resin or filament or whatever.
I think people naturally just like think metal. Like human being love metal. Ever since Egyptian time, they love gold. Okay? That was something just part of our nature. It was in our blood. So you can see the big sort of like the debate. I have been a big auto art collector too since I was teenage. So when they announced that they want to go from diecast to resin to ABS plastic, there had been a lot of debate in the last decade, whether that's a right or wrong. To resin car collector, they were okay because you're going to put it inside the display box anyways. You're not going to touch it, right? But then, yes, the fabrication of metal diecast is a lot more complicated than plastic. That is the truth. So it's kind of like a dilemma. Well, you can't have the best of both worlds. Yeah, so it's just depending on what you want. But I think a lot of people would prefer diecast. And this is why now we have to establish our very own factory. Not just that, we have our own tool shop, our own 3D design team. We print our own 3D and all these things. Because the ultimate thing is the kind of like the thing I try to resolve is I want to make diecast car as intricate as a plastic car. And a lot of people would tell you that, hey, it can be done. No, it can be done. Even AI exists today. Why not? It mind over matter. It's just depending on how you want to do it. But if you attempt it with a method that was 20 years ago mythology, it's not going to work. You have to make the latest product with a 2026 technology, right? Well, you can't use a 1995 technology.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we will get to the new stuff coming out. There is one thing, obviously, Greenlight was acquired late 2022, and then you were appointed CEO. First thing you do when you're appointed CEO, what's the first thing you either change or do? What do you do?
Okay, this is kind of the part that a lot of people have misunderstood, and I have not made myself clear, okay? Because I didn't have a chance like podcasts like this. So going back to the question you just asked me, how does all these things go to Greenlight? So before Greenlight, well, our mother group company, Waltersons, have already acquired another military collectible brand, and is probably no stranger to most U.S. collector. The name is called Forces of Valor. So it's one of the most famous diecast brand in after millennium. Okay, it used to be sold at Target. Brand was owned by one of our not family friend, but it's kind of close to friends of my father. And then he said he wants to retire. He's 70 years old. He said he wants to retire because they do not have a factory. So it's very difficult to commission a factory to make military products, like the amount of procedure involved and all these things. And so we came across with that opportunity in 2017 when we acquired the brand and the tooling procession. It looks cool. Wow, 1,700 sets of tool. But the trouble is, after we acquired, then it immediately come to the problem. Like, none of the businesses we have is diecast. I love diecast, but there is a difference between collecting diecast and manufacturing diecast, man. You can go to a restaurant, you can go eat at Danish, but it doesn't mean that you can go to the kitchen and become a chef. That's two different things, man. So the main trouble is that when I first got in the military business, at first, like, I didn't know what to do, because we have only acquired the mold, and the brand. There was not a company. There was no operation. People were basically finished it with the old company. So I have to restart the whole thing again from scratch. And at first, I really wasn't thinking about to start my own factory because like a lot of people I came across, they would strongly suggest you not to start your own manufacturing facility because it's going to drive you nuts. And then, that's what I thought too. Well, then I take it to some place, ask someone to do it. But, it has been a very painful process. I went to a lot of factories and I went to them with samples, and a lot of factories owner, the production manager, they were like, oh, I don't want to touch this stuff. It's complicated. You need to have like a rolling wheel, suspension, moving parts. You want to have like a weathering effect, all these things, right? So they would rather make diecast cars. In comparison, it's a lot easier to manufacture. So it has probably taken me like 2-3 years to start the very preliminary stage of our factory. But then once you start the factory, the next thing is you need business, right? So then I start going to Nuremberg Toy Fair in Germany, okay? The most famous toy fair that will be held like last week of January or first week of February, right? And one of my distributor is from Chile, and he's a very nice guy. And in every year, he will host sort of a dinner called a pork night, having pork knuckle, the famous German pork knuckle. So that's where I met my ex-colleague from Greenlight because we were assigned it to the same table. So we were across from each other. And then we got talking. I was like, hey, like, what do you do? Obviously, during the dinner, right? You chit chat. Oh, what do you do? Yeah. So, oh, you do plastic model kits. Oh, you do train. You do what? I said, oh, we do military collectible. And then they said, oh, I do. I make cars. And I said, oh, that's nice. Well, I love cars since I was a kid. So that's how I have the initial connection with Greenlight. And then at that time, they told me, they said, hey, some of my colleagues are actually from the Hong Kong office. Well, basically, one of the ex-owner of Greenlight is actually also a Hong Kong guy. He takes care of the production. So they made the introduction for us because we're both from Hong Kong. We're homies, right? And then they were like, okay, so I'm going to introduce you to him. So that's how I got to know him. And after I knew him, we kept in touch. And I think that time it was almost COVID. And we had the factory at that time. But in the early stage, military products we have, this is how I would describe it. It's kind of like gold inside a safe, but without the key. So it's very difficult to crack down the product because the research is tremendous. I went from nothing, from no books until now. I have literally half a library in my office in Hong Kong and in the US. I've been buying books. I've been visiting museums. I've been talking to veterans, trying to understand the subject matter, right? So that was it. So at that time, I was trying to get more work for the factory. So that's why I contacted the Hong Kong owner, then I was like, hey, well, since the last time I spoke to him, he said, hey, Greenlight have a lot of orders. And I was like, hey, would you mind? Do you want to try my factory? Well, that was how it's all started. This is how, this is the 100% true. Like, this is how it all started. And until probably during almost it was probably summer 2022. And then when I was on the phone with them and then chit chat, and then in one occasion, he told me, he said, Greenlight is up for sale. And I said, wow, are you for real? He's like, yeah. Yeah. So they're thinking to exit. The majority shareholders thinking to exit. And I was like, wow. And then he came to me, he was like, are you interested? And I went to him, I'm like, maybe you can ask. Cause obviously we have different businesses in Asia. Okay. So we were into investment and stuff. Then maybe at that time I thought would be an investment opportunity, right? So that's how it really got all started, man. Otherwise, how in the world you think, like me, how can I connect it with Greenlight out of nowhere? Yeah.
You never know who you're eating dinner with and what that'll unfold, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Exactly.
What would you say in today's market the most challenging thing in running a diecast company is?
I would say probably a lot of the people that I've known is there are actually a couple challenges. I would say obviously competition, but competition not just between different brands, but now you got 100, 500 other brands from China. They don't have to get a license and they can just create whatever they want, whatever subject they want. They don't have to go through the painful process of license application. They don't have to get approval. And then, nowadays with access, user-friendly internet, with Facebook, with AliExpress. And I mean, ultimately being a collector, you and me, we care about license, but most importantly, you care about the product, the product itself. If the product is being well made, there are two choices for you. One with license, poorly made. One without license, but precisely made. I ask you this question, Jacob, which one are you going to choose, right? Oh, that's a hard decision, right? See, that's the thing, So a lot of traditional manufacturers, I think today they come across with this issue. Having, and obviously it's easy. Small packages coming out from China, it's easy to ship. So that is one of the biggest issue.
So for Greenlight, you guys are, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of this way. It's almost like Greenlight is becoming a phoenix rising from the ashes, so to speak.
Yes.
Do you think a rebrand is necessary? Do you take what you got and just throw something good out there and hope people see your dedication and the quality? What is that going to look like?
Okay, so going back to the story, like when we first acquired the company, we were not the entire shareholder because we were just the majority shares. And at that time, there were the old management, obviously. So a lot of people thought that I was being appointed CEO. I think that news probably went out in June. But in reality, I did not really get to control the company until, I would say, entirely control the company until probably a year ago. And you will find it surprised. You'll be like, wow, really? Yes, it is. When we first acquired the company, obviously with my father, okay, the chairman of the group, he was thinking as an investment for us because obviously I had no experience operating a diecast company over the past. So how in the world, even as your own father, would you think that, why would he put his son to operate something that he had never had exposure, right? Yeah. So his original idea is to become kind of like a silent investor. But obviously having Greenlight, that would be beneficial for Forces of Valor because you don't have to find a distributor. Now you have a bloodline related company. So that was originally what we have thought about. But obviously after we stepped foot into the company, it was different than what we thought. Yeah, it was actually very different. So then there were some disagreement, just like anything you've seen in the drama. And then, so we technically don't get to, I don't get to involve with sales probably until July and August. But at that time, the very, very first thing that I have to resolve is not sales, it's production. Because as you might have aware, I would have to say production from Greenlight over the past, they were probably not the best. And you might have heard this story. And during the event, I have shared my experience. The first time when I went to the Indiana office, okay, so I went to the sample room. They have a Ford F-Series Type 3 ambulance. So I was holding the ambulance, looking at it. And then I was like, and I start rolling it. And it just wobbled. It just, And I had a joke with my dad. I said, you know what? If this is in reality, the patient would have been dead before they arrived at the hospital, right? But that was the truth. Then you start looking into every detail. You start looking at the casting, right? I have to say, they have brilliant topics. Some of the cars that they have made are brilliant, but the execution, there was problem with the execution. And then obviously I start questioning. I'm like, why the quality is like this? But then, when this is also part of the disagreement. And then, some of my colleagues were like, no, they're fine. They're okay. Then I asked the question, do we really have any collector in the office? And then obviously they said, yeah, but I said, do you buy your collection or you just collect samples sending out from the factories? See, that's the difference. Your mindset, your mentality is different when you have to buy something rather than being given something. You can have a room full of diecasts, okay? But if you don't spend money to buy that, you don't have the connection. So, with all the diecast that we have bought over the years, sometimes in the old days, we have to save up the lunch money. And when I was in university, when I got my Tamiya 1 to the 12th scale Enzo Ferrari, I have to save a couple months of allowance, man, in order to get it. But that is one of the best collection I ever have. And in the old days, Exodo, if you want to go to Exodo, buy Exodo, I have to save 4 or 5 months of allowance, man. But then if you spend your own money to buy this stuff, you would then do research. And in the early days when they have internet, you would go start looking at reviews, whether this stuff is okay, looking at pictures online. But then the argument that they were telling me at that time, they were like, hey, but our stuff were cheap, man. So this is why. Well, you pay what you get. But not exactly, man. Even as a $10 car, look at the cars that we're going to produce now. It wasn't the old Greenlight price, but you get twice. You get twice the quality. The price increased at maybe 25%, but you're getting 100% completely brand new tools. Real car scan and everything is totally different.
Yeah, I think you hit it exactly on the head. Wow. Because if you think about it, I've bought a couple expensive $500 cars. I open them up, paint chips. I can't tell you how upset I was. If I'm paying $500 for a car, it should come to me pristine. Imagine if you bought your Ferrari and you went to roll it if it rolled and it's wobbling. You saved up for months, you'd be devastated. And the thing is we're thinking like us, $10. But my son who, well, I don't pay him allowance yet, but let's say I give him $2 a week. He saves up over a month to buy that Greenlight car, and the patient's flying out the back of the ambulance. That might long-term affect his view of Greenlight. So,
yeah, and also the thing is, back then we used to have, the more I dig into the casting portfolio and study the whole thing, Greenlight used to be sharing tires because they don't want to invest on tires, and then they just put the same, they have different rim into pretty much there was 20 different tire sizes, but you will have 40, 60 different rims. So reluctantly, you have to fit those wrong diameters rims into the tires. Then it just make the car look weird. When you collect something, it's about the proportion. The proportion of the fender, the wheel, the gap, the clearance, and all these shit. And being a sports car, you want to sit slow. It's about the stance. But then if you have the gap that big, man, how does that justify as a sport car?
Man, you're taking everything that I'm thinking right out of my... I was going to talk to you about wheels because I think wheels is a massive part of a car. And the way I view it is, let's look at your outfit, right? Let's say you have an awesome outfit, but your shoes are just beat. It's taking out the whole outfit.
Right on. Yeah.
Whereas if you have a meh outfit and you have awesome shoes, it brings the outfit up. And I kind of view it the same way of wheels with cars. And you just hit it right on the head.
Yeah,
As
well, I
far
think
as
not just the car, the packaging as well. So that's why in the event you might have seen some of the videos of our new packaging, which is called the G acrylic blister. So where does that idea came from? At first, when I was in the office, I have been talking to some staff about IndyCar, and then they were telling me, they were like, "Hey, during IndyCar, people want to open the car during the event, but the trouble is Greenlight used to have a completely sealed blister. So first of all, it's difficult for them to open it. You have to open it with a scissors. And then if you don't open it with a scissors, or once you crack it open, and then you have the car, but you have no way to contain it. So there's no going back. So it's either buy two of them. Well, the best scenario would be buy two of them. One of them, you just break the packaging and throw it away. And then the other one, just keep it in your collection. So at that time, I start to doing some hand sketch. Yeah, because I used to do art when I was in school. So doing some hand sketch, I was like, hey, can we figure out a packaging that can return, that is returnable, that we can return it back to the packaging? And I've tried it many times with different paper materials. And until eventually, then one day I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, why would people like a blister with a peg hole? Okay. Because they want to hang it, because with different graphics, that makes a beautiful scene in your house. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, have anyone thought about doing this in plastic injection? And I was speaking to my engineer. They were like, probably no. Do you want to try? It's like anything else. It's like when we were in university, man. Well, the only question that you don't ask, the most stupid question is the question you don't ask, right? So why don't we give it a go? Well, we try it. And it turns out that I would say this packaging is probably one of the most beautiful packaging. Like the car, you know why? If you understand the way how a blister card is being manufactured, then you know why this acrylic is better. Because a blister card, the blister card itself is created from little bubble, like kind of like a blister raw plastic. So they melt it. When they melt it, they put it into kind of like a machine with two sheets, and then they melt it. So they put it into two sheets. And then when it's being dried, it becomes the sheets. And then when you go into the vacuum forming machine, so let's say this is the vacuum forming machine, and you lay the blister on top, and then it has a suctions that sucks the shape. But the trouble is how this piece of mold being made, most of them are being made by clay or by copper. But when you make it by clay or by copper, the surface cannot be 100% smooth. Unless you use a CAD-CAM, use CNC to machine it, but it will be too expensive. So that's the reason why you start to see all these little line, all this little imperfection with a blister, because blister were meant to be a protection inside a packaging. It was never meant to be kind of like stand alone as a display case to people. So, but the way how acrylic is being made, so there's also plastic raw material, which is acrylic. When you pour it into the injection machines, but because the mold is made by steel, and the worker, the tool maker, they would polish the mold to a mirror finishing. So the reason why that can be 100% transparency is because the negative, the mold is like a mirror. That's the reason why. So I can probably send you one of them and you check it out, and I think you will like it.
So I actually have a Gpack from my Neverland Lowrider.
Okay.
And I will tell you, everyone who I've talked to about Greenlight has ranted and raved about the Gpack. It's a hit. Everyone loves the Gpack, and being able to take the car out and put it back in, and it looks clean. Everyone's loving it. I have not heard one negative thing about it.
And I tell you one thing, so I designed it the outside. So at that time, at first we designed it kind of like a conventional blister, like a rectangular shape. And until one day, then I thought, well, we want to have a new logo for Greenlight. Then I thought maybe I will use the silhouette of the G, incorporate the silhouette of the G into the packaging. And also the reason why we have the new logo, because if you look at a lot of the old collectibles that we have, when you go to the mass market, when you step a few steps back, when you look at all the Greenlight products, you cannot tell it's Greenlight. There's no way you can tell, because the nature of the Greenlight words is kind of short but long. So when you place it inside a packaging, unless you do it like Hot Wheels, we'll have the whole thing run across. Otherwise, if you just do one small logo, you can hardly see it's a green light. But then the whole purpose of doing this is we want collector, when they go to the shelf, before they even approach it to a nose distance, they can actually see, hey, that's G and L. And if you think about it, out of everyone that I've spoke to, they really rarely call Greenlight Greenlight. They just go GL. Even our own staff, they said, hey, GL, GL. So we have been known for GL. So why, well, if that's the case, then why don't we take the advantage? GL. And then about the acrylic packaging inside with that tray was actually not designed by me. That was actually by my father. Because at first, when I had the tray, well, when I have the blister finish, right? My original intent was to use the blister inside to hold it. Because then the next thing you would think about, the delivery, safety, and all these issues, right? And then because me and my dad have very good relationship, Yeah, we talk, we live very closely to each other. And then when I have samples, and I would just go to him, I go, Pops, what do you think? And then he looked at it, and he was like, you know what? Well, the packaging is good, but the inside, man, it's so ugly. He said you have the most beautiful packaging on the outside, but the inside is so ugly. Then I was like, really? He said, yeah. You kind of you have a Armani suit, man, but then you have a regular sports shoes, man, like a beat up sports shoes, man. He's like, can you go think of something different? And then obviously so I start to think again, okay? And I have to tell this to the public. Thanks to who? That design with the tray, with the little knob, that was actually originally a Spark model design. But I have kind of upgraded because I'm good friend with co-founder of Spark Model. He's an Englishman, Kai Rigby, early investment banker, used to work at Merrill Lynch and moved to Hong Kong. And I'm good friend with him. So I used to go, I still do go to his house to have coffee. He's a big diecast collector. You'll be surprised how many diecast cars he kept in his house. Amazing. And then one time when I was having coffee with him, then I looked at the Spark 64, then I said, Kai, this is amazing. I like the design you have. You don't have to use a screw. And then Kai was like, yeah, it was cool. But the difficult part is the car may fall out. So this is the only drawback. So I said, in the future, if I do 64 scale, yeah, I want to use kind of the same design. So now I have to give credit to him. It was actually from him. So that was the idea, kind of the demand from kind of my father. And then the inspiration from Spark Model 64. Actually, kind of inspire us to eventually go into this final design. And at the very beginning, with this design, you see there's 4 pillar over here, right? So there wasn't 4 pillar at first. There were just, so the car, it doesn't sit flat on the floor. And again, when my dad saw the next sample, he was like, what's up with the car, man? It's tilting. It's not leveling to the ground. Something's wrong, man. Then I'm like, yep, you're right. Well, now when you put the car on the floor, it sits flat parallel to the horizontal, which is beautiful. So even itself like this, it can be a display. And the most amazing thing, I think you have probably tried it, is how easy it can pull out. Done. It's elegant. This is the whole process. A lot of our design are inspired by Japanese design. It has to be elegant. The whole thing. When you go to Japan, when you go to the high-speed train and when you buy the food, from start to finish is elegant. You won't have anything spill on the table. That's kind of the concept that we want to implement into diecast car.
Which it's beautiful. It's awesome. It's such a great idea. And that Honda you had is also awesome. Now, when are we going to see those Gpacks in the U.S. market? When are we going to see them in stores? Is there going to be a different avenue? I know that's a lot of the premium line will be in that Gpack. What is that process going to look like?
Okay, so I think the very first model that we have developed that fits the Gpack actually started at the beginning of this year. And the reason why we have not just go release it, because like anything else, it's like when you walk into a restaurant. I always reference this to my colleague, to my staff when we have meeting. We're not trying to be like a big company. We just want to be an Italian restaurant, but something that after you have that meal, and unforgettable dining experience with the server, with the food that you always craving. You want to come back to us. This is the way how I want to build the future Greenlight, not just walk into fast food chain, right? But then that same thing again, we want to have seasonal menu. We want to have the regular dish, but something that the ingredients is fresh, the stuff is good. Yeah, so this is what we try to do. And that's why we use the opportunity of all the trade show to test the water, because we want to get the feedback from the market. So instead of blasting it out to them, to everyone, and what if there is a flaw, right? And I remember from my old buddies, they always say to me, when you go out dating, you get only one chance to impress, and it's the first time. And if you screw up in the first time, I'm sorry, no more. It's gone. So this is the reason why we use trade show as a start couple times, but it just happens to be Chinese trade show. That's the reason why. And until now at the event, finally first time that we bring it to the American soil. And the Gpack will officially be released probably 2 months later. Pre-order will start. And again, the pre-order, from pre-order to final delivery, it will be much shorter because now we have dedicated our own factory specifically to handle the premium line. And then speaking of the packaging, just now you were saying that, this is the Gpack, right? We have actually developed one more option except for Gpack. I'm going to show you here. This is a box. So this is the acrylic box. So all the GLP line, our customers can select between inside a box or inside a Gpack, because obviously for some smaller household, or maybe some people would prefer not hanging on the wall, they just want display. This is it. But then obviously we added some tricks to the design, because the conventional way, since I was a kid, ever since mini champ start dominating the market, right? Every car comes with a case. The case, if you specifically look at it, it is a top bottom. So the trouble is when you have more collection stacking together, you run into the issue when you try to pick the second car in the column. You have to remove all the cars on top. But then now, first of all, we have this flaps that goes at the front. So in a column, you could have 8 cars. But then when you hold them, you can actually pull it open. And then you can pull the tray out again. See? But then there's also one more trick with this design. There are 4 interlocks. See? Right here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when one sit on top of each other, it actually locks each other. Because what is the worst thing? Over the
Been falling off.
right? When it fell, then we were like, no, our collection. Well, you see, after been collecting in this game for 30 years, right? A lot of our collection, probably they worth not a lot of commercial value to us, or even if it worth a lot of commercial value, but I'm not planning to sell it. I have a 2002 1/18 scale Maybach 62 with the factory box, the gold color one. I've looked it up at eBay. It probably worth like $900 now, but never in a second I thought I would sell it because it becomes my old friend. And the most devastated thing is seeing the hood start having the diecast cancer. Paint chipping off. If you tell me that someone is selling a hood for $200, I would buy and replace it because it has been here with me that long. So a lot of this collection for a true collector, it will become their old friend. So when you start collecting more and more, and I always tell friends and also staff at the office, what are the 2 things that being a collector that you worry the most, that you have to fight against? Okay. First thing, space. This is why 64 scale is becoming so big. Because when you start collecting 118, the first 10 of them, you'll be like, okay, that's fine. I got space for you. When you start collecting to 50, you're like, oh my God, well, someone, it could be either by your wife, your mom, or who, right? And then they'll be like, why are you buying all these stuff, for what, right? And then when you collect it to number 70, you realize that you got no more space. So that's why the more you collect, the more picky you become because you got no more space. You can only fit the best guy. And also the other thing is contamination. When you have the car display, there will be dust, there will be contamination, there will be anything that can be spilled on top, and it will be difficult to remove all this contamination. And this is the reason why we have display case. So now having the advantage of a display case, easy to access, and then you can stack them up like this. So there will be 2 options.
Yeah, and the cool thing with that is the opening of the front. You don't have to remove them. So people, I know dioramas right now are big, right? Like I want to pull the car out, get a cool shot in my cool little diorama,
Yeah.
put it back.
Put
It
it
just
back.
makes it that
Yes,
much
exactly.
easier.
Yeah.
So I think that's sweet. And the fact that it locks in I mean, is great because a lot of times you get these acrylics, you stack them up. Well, I have some acrylics back there, you may can guess, but they don't even stack really. So being able to lock it in, have it stable, and protecting your collection and everything like that is absolutely
That's true. And
amazing.
also
Now,
one more thing, but that I will leave it for the next couple of months because we have not announced yet. There will be a lightning system that you can buy it as a hop-up option. Because like anything else, when you have all these cars, when you place this car in your room, you always get some dead space that you don't have enough light. This is the problem that we come across all these years when we collect cars. But the difficult part is you cannot get light nearby. You always have that dilemma. So now we have developed a special thing that will release in 2 months. And then there will be a hop-up thing that you can install to the bottom of the tray and it will light up. And then we're going to have an apps and then you can change color, 256 colors. Remember when Mustang, fifth generation Mustang, the retro one, 2004? I was in Canada at that time, and I went look at it, Ford GT, and I was shocked. The speedometer, most of the lights at that time, you can change 110 of them. So that's where the idea came from. So imagine if you can have columns of display and then you could light it up in white, in yellow, in blue, in pink, and you can adjust the brightness in your phone. It's easy. And then they just connect they just connect with each other.
and I mean, with that many color options, you could fade it from blue to purple, or you could do
You can do,
amazing
or if you
stuff.
like green light, you can do green. If you like Hot Wheel, you can do yellow and orange. It doesn't matter, right? In the collecting world, we're all equal.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think people should get excited about that as well. That's super cool. One thing I want to talk about is engagement. Now, you kind of touched on it. You said, hey, we have a first date, right? That's your time to make an impression. Now, I want to go back to that because there's a lot of people who may have had that first date with Greenlight and they no longer, they done moved on.
For sure.
Now, obviously, today's Greenlight is not the same Greenlight of even just
Yep.
a few years ago.
Yep.
So, engagement, how to get people to, hey, you know what? I messed up on the first date, but give me a second chance, like,
Yeah.
I'll take it as sushi, whatever. But, what does that look like? Do you target kind of, I guess, more marketing strategy? Do you target more influencers, or how do you try to draw them back in for that second chance?
Okay. Yep. Agree. And I like your question. And you know what? It's like the old saying, it's not the end of the world. If you screw up the first time, you can do it again, but then it will take 3 times the effort. Okay. 3 times the effort. Yes, it can be done, but first time is the easiest. But if you mess up, yes. So this is what we're doing now. And this is why right now it's increasingly difficult for us to convince some of the old collector to come back because people kind of got used to, they were like, their Hot Pursuit, their Crown Vic were not as good, man. They were just doing the same thing over and over again. See, it takes time, but I believe that the fundamental is the core product, whether your product is good or not. If your product is good, see, during the event, well, I've said to them, in marketing, okay, there are 5 different elements. There's a 5P theory, okay, so-called a pipe theory. So some companies would prioritize price at first, people, promotion, place, product, okay? But for us, we would consider product in the top priority because people buy the product. And especially this is diecast. You bring it back home, sit on the shelf. You want the most beautiful appearance. It's the product. So after having the product, the next thing we will look at is promotion. And this is why also when I met with Marilo, my good friend, and after the event, we just sat at the bar and he also said to me, he said, Vincent, you guys are probably making some of the best product in the industry now, but you need more promotion, man. And one of the promotion that you guys should do now is you got to step up, man. You got to go behind the curtain, man. You can't just stay behind in R&D and all that. And especially you develop a lot of this stuff. You have the experience. Why don't you share with people? This is what people want. And I think this is the reason why I'm here today. Yeah. Because I think this is the beginning of, I will tell you exactly what we have done, because I involved with all the new casting. I involved with the development, the tool design, and specifically why I have done this, done that to make it like this. So there are a lot to share. And it's probably going to take, I don't know how many sessions, Jacob, probably 10 of this just to go over the stuff that we're about to release. Because with the new Greenlight Premium portfolio, we have about between 45 to 50 new casting in the kitchen that are ready to roll out. And we won't stop just there. And then there will be another 45 to 50 coming out in the next probably. So there will be a lot. Yeah. Well, in a nutshell, yeah, there will be a lot of new casting.
So one kind of question that I have is chases. And I think this may be confusing to people who maybe they're not full-blown Greenlight yet. Like, so, they take a peek, see if there's a chase, and then they go look at whatever they're looking at, okay? And it's confusing to them because previously there was green machines, right? The green wheels. Then it kind of went raw, and now we have hydrochrome. So is there something we're sticking with? Is there a reason for the different chases? Tell us more about that.
Good. So now I'll take this chance to explain the whole thing, okay? So the chase concept, the idea. Well, shortly after I got into Greenlight, obviously I would search who is the founder of Greenlight. And it's this gentleman, his name is Kevin Davey. And I got to know him and become friends because he lives in Indiana. So every now and then when I come visit, then I would go out to have dinner with him. And when I have dinner with him, he would share a lot of stories with me, even though he sold the company in 2011. But he found the company. He was the guy. He used to work at the racetrack. He used to work at the speedway. That's how he got the IndyCar license. That is how all it started. And being a longtime car enthusiast. And then Kevin was telling me at that time when he first created the chase, he actually wanted to do hydrochrome too back then, but it was too expensive. It was too expensive to do it. So that's why he settled for metallic green. In the very old days, Round 2 and Greenlight share the same OEM factories in the very first stage. So this is why now you see, Round 2 have that red chase, right? Which is a metallic red, okay? So it was probably restricted by the factory, to be honest, It is never restricted by the designer. Designer always want to shoot to the moon, and it's always get dragged down by the factory, They say, oh, the reality is too expensive, you cannot do it, right? So then I would conclude that Kevin Davies' time, which was like the first generation of Greenlight, they have created the green chase as with a metallic body, and that was the green machine back then. But then, again, when it migrated to Greenlight Generation 2, because they were more cost conscious, and then they were like, I'm just guessing, okay? Yeah, don't count me for that. But I think one of the reasons is they probably, or the factory, they refused to make green body because it's such a small quantity. And then they just probably go, instead of that, we're just going to make the wheel in hydrochrome. But then the trouble is, after I got into Greenlight, I've interviewed a lot of customers, collector. And then green machine was sort of like, what was a dilemma. Someone loved it. Someone would hate it. And especially when the chrome reel matched with a red body color. And one of my customers said, does that make the perfect Christmas present? Well, green wheel with a red body, right? So then at that time, I thought to myself, I was like, what if we could do this with hydrochrome? And obviously, when I got back to the factories and have meetings with them and I found that this technique is actually available. So then I start doing some testing. And then we created the chrome body version of the old green machine. But now instead of having just the wheel in chrome, we make the entire body in chrome, and it costs a lot more. Like, I mean, that unit costs us a lot. It takes 3 times the cost to create the hydrochrome. And remember, there is a yield. There is the place that, like they will mess up, like any manufacturing. They mess up. And when they mess up, they have to throw the body away. So out of 10, well, let's say do the probability, right? Out of 100 cars, maybe 20% of them is a scrap. 80% of them are okay. So we got to factor in that 20% into the 80% as well. That was the thing. Okay. But then the reason why we thought of what we call now the chrome machine is because then I thought, we have the 48 assortment. Okay? We have the 48 pieces pack assortment or the 48 straight case. So, like any dealership, when they carry a 48 assortment, it would be easier to sell because there are 6 of them. 6 times 8 equal to 4. You have 8 of each car. Then you get maybe out of 2 case, you get 1 chase, okay? But then we thought about it. If you have a straight case, 48 of them, it will be difficult to sell because unless it's a super hot car. Otherwise, if you interview a lot of Greenlight dealers, a lot of them is like, oh, I start giving my grandkids away. Yeah, when it sell down to the number 27 because it never sells. It sits in the storage. Then we sort of came up with an idea. What if we make the chase more interesting? What if we turn that body color into a hydrochrome body color? So that is the beginning of Chrome Chase. And of course, at first, there were a lot of criticism. They were like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But again, like anything else, you never know unless you try, right? But I think now, after the emotion calmed down, a lot of collector, we start seeing at the space, they start going, hey, that's pretty cool, man. Like, I mean, you could have an A-team van and then you could have the gray color become a hydrochrome gray, which is pretty cool. And then you could have like a New York taxi, and then you could have that yellow sort of like, well, because it's really difficult to do yellow chrome, and then you kind of like have like a yellowish gold chrome, and then right, yeah. So, well, I asked this question: what is a chase? Because I never come across with a chase during my journey of collecting. Because it's more European style. The brand that I buy were like MR collections. They were like BBR. There was like mini chams, right? Auto art. There was no chase in auto art, man. So yeah. So now we cut in a different perspective to do chase. And what is the purpose of chase? Chase is being little, small quantity, right? Limited supply. So then we thought to ourselves, why don't we put more things to make the chase look better? And this is the reason why we have the chrome chase. Obviously, it costs like 3-4 the cost of the car to make the chase. And it's even more difficult to make the chrome chase. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one chase was raw that I know of. I know for sure, I think there was the Rocky Firebird. Might have been a raw. So going forward, collectors can expect the hydrochrome chases, right?
Yes, but at first, obviously, when we first implement that, there were some issue. At first, there was some internal like communication issue. The staff thought that they were chased for every single 6 release. So there were a month production that they have oversupply. But until then, it has quickly been spotted out and been rectified. So now, out of 6 cars, only 1 car would be chosen as a green chase, and 1 car would be chosen to be a chrome chase. So it won't be 6 of them. Do not worry. It's just 1 of the car. And also, we purposely picked the car that worth to be a chase. We just won't pick random car. We really have a deep think of which one turns out to be a chrome chase would be cool.
I think the Chrome Chase that's one thing that in my mind has really kind of been the Phoenix moment for Greenlight, because I'll just be kind of frank, and I mean, no offense, but there would be people, they would see the green wheels and they'd be like, it kind of takes away from the car, like Christmas tree, right? But from my perspective and talking to fellow collectors, they've gotten pretty excited over the chrome chases. I was just at a local diecast thing here this weekend. I saw a few of them. People are grabbing them, and obviously that's what you want, right? You want people to grab your
Yeah.
product and not
Well,
walk by
Chris,
it. So
the thing is, I shop a lot. Like I go to visit people. And I remember one time when I was in LA, when I went to Frank and Son, and then they have a lot of diecast, they have a lot of like comics. And when I went to the diecast aisle, I've seen there were all the other brands. There were Hot Wheels, of course. Dominant brands is Hot Wheels. And then you have round two, there were very little Greenlight. Then I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my God, well, why there ain't a lot of Greenlight? And then when I speak to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper will like, people do not really like Greenlight. Yeah, because it's the same thing over and over again. Yeah. So I think what I'm doing now is after collecting many opinions. So I wouldn't just go, oh, I'm going to make a decision out of nowhere. No, the decision is usually coming out from after discussion with many collectors, dealers, and also, yeah, with the manufacturing factory, yeah, with our R&D colleague engineers, yeah, eventually arrive at that.
I think it's great. I think that's the greatest thing that Greenlight has done so far, except for the new castings you're going to be releasing. I think it's starting to get people back excited. To be honest with you, and you can see your thought process. You're not just in there pulling levers and trying to see what works. You can tell you're putting actual thought, and like you said, you can tell you're asking people, hey, and you will always have those people who they hate change. Well, everybody hates change, right? And so going from the green wheels to now the whole thing's blue for Walmart or red for Target, or they'll get over it and they'll start to love it, I think.
Yeah, but then with certain mass market, it is not up to us, because as you can imagine, you're dealing with mass market. Mass market have certain demand specification that they want from us. So we can't just go to mass market and say we want to do that. Well, we're not Bobby, man. Remember. So I think even big company have to play balls with them because they're giant. But then, well, like you said, there were a lot of questions being asked to us. They were like, hey, how come you guys redo the casting that have released it already? Now give you the perfect example. I have over here the new 2013 Shelby GT500. And a lot of people said to us, they were like, hey, I thought you guys already have this casting. Well, why are you making it again? But if you look at this casting compared to the old one, and it's day and night difference. Look at the windshield over here. A lot of the diecast company, they would have a huge gap. They would like a step down. And look at the way how we have done it now. It's almost like a 43rd scale, right? Mm-hmm. And then this is a GLP, okay? GLP is going to have a hard plastic. Is going to have a hard plastic side mirrors. And reason why we don't use PVC is because you use PVC because if you put it inside a matchbox, paper box, when consumer press the box, they may break the side mirror. Agree? But now when we have a hard case, there is no way you can be at the shop. You can press this and break this. And during transportation online buying, it will be well protected with bubble wrap. But then the reason why, again, we make hard plastic for the side mirror, that has to do with the nature of injection process. When you do injection for PVC, because it's a soft plastic, it's a category of rubber, inevitably during the curing process of the plastic, going from 240 degree to 40 degrees, the shape will be off, it will be distorted, So you may be having the side mirror, one of them sticking higher than the other. And that's not something that the manufacturer can rectify. This is something has to do with the process, the injection process. But when we do it with a hard plastic, it stays there. It stays at whatever angle we want it to be. And then also if you look at the wheels, see the wheels? Not just the wheels, but if you look closely, we have a narrow wheels at the front. We have a wider wheels at the back. That's the thing that we're trying to achieve. Look at the bottom. Look at all these, look at all the details. And then look at all the tire patterns. We now use a 5-axle CNC machine to carve out all these patterns. The old days, they were kind of blurred because they can't release it from the mold. But then we are now using new technology to do it. And then if you look at this, well, the exhaust pipe paint in chrome, see? Not just
Yeah.
because it's
Wow.
located at the chassis. And also with the GLP line, we start using screws because people want to modify it, right? Do this with screw, and then they can modify it. And then if you look at the rear end, well, if you look at the tail light, see the details, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally different.
Give it the depth effect there.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Beautiful.
this is a Mustang. So this is one of the other new casting we have. This is a Honda FD2. So if you look at that, and also GLP is gonna have suspension, you see?
Wow.
It's gonna have a coil suspension. So when you roll it, that's the experience that I want people to have. When they roll it, they just go, wow, that's really smooth. Wow. That's the kind of experience that I want to provide,
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know because of Greenlight's scale and how they try to kind of keep it true to scale and the authenticity of it, a lot of customizers use Greenlight products. So things that you're doing, like adding those screws where they can just whip it off, they don't have to drill out the rivet. It's going to make a big difference. The suspension is awesome. The details, most companies would just paint that, a silver,
Yes.
and it wouldn't be silver, it would be dull. But you're chroming it out. I think it's just a testament of what you want to turn it into, to be honest with you. It's amazing.
Yeah, but you know what we're gonna do now is we will keep Greenlight at a competitive price point. So the starting of the basic Greenlight line will remain under $10. But having that said, $10. The shape is going to be completely accurate. And also, when like they were kind of like an illusion, you've seen some of the marketing, true scale, okay? Or true length. But remember, this is the trick. True length just tell you the length between the head and the tail is true. But what about the length from here to here? What about the proportion, the windshield proportion, the drive mirror proportion, the quarter window proportion, the wheel proportion? Those stuff can be off scale. So when they say 1/64 scale, true scale, my question is the entire car in true scale? It may not. It may only be the length be true scale. But then the width can be off scale. The wheelbase could be off scale. So what we're trying to achieve with new Greenlight, not just Greenlight Premium, or the highest brand that we're going to have, Highway. All of this are going to have true proportion, not just the length, true proportion everywhere. Yeah, not just here. It's here. Okay, well the entire proportion, it gotta be correct, Yeah.
You said something there that I want to touch on. You said Highway, which is the first time I'm hearing about that. Is that going to be, so we've talked about Greenlight Premium, and we can cut this out if we need to, but Highway, is that going to be like opening parts? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, Highway is essentially going to be the Jedi Master in 64 scale. It is going to have Highway is going to have open hood. So yeah, a very detailed open hood. Okay, well, this is one of the examples. You see,
Superchargers chrome on there.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So, and then there's one thing. Highway is going to have a front wheel steering. There will be front wheel steering with a Highway. That's the thing. Because have you thought about this? Well, again, having all the collector experience that I've just told you, this is a C7. This is a raw model of the Corvette C7 ZR1, okay? So it will have an open hood, right? But also, if you look at the back, it has steering. See? Yeah. And the reason why is because obviously over the past you collect a lot of cars, right? Most of the cars are just straight because that's the easiest thing. Put a shaft on it, right? Simple, done. But the one Highway car that we're going to have, each wheel is going to have individual suspension, individual spring suspension. And the suspension in Greenlight Premium is a lift spring. It's a simple one. But the one in Highway is the kind of like the highest grade. Each wheel will have individual suspension. And then it will have. So what I'm trying to do is to create a scene. So when you have the car going into the corner, right? Well, like a real time driving, okay? And then you will flip the steering wheel. And then the car will probably spin off a little bit. And then your front wheel would be going into the other position, opposite position. Yeah. During a drifting or whatever, exotic driving. So having front wheel steering basically just increase make the car more dynamic, and that's the whole thing.
And like we already talked about, dioramas, having it pulling into the, dioramas are big right now. Having, making little scenes with them, having the wheels turning is a big thing. In fact, you might see this car right here, but it's a customizer. But he calls it drift spec, where you can either turn them or put them straight. You have to pop the wheels out. So he's the first I've seen do kind of that as a customizer. But I think it's so slept on because it just is going to create more realistic scenes. It gives you more you can do with the car. What is the price point going to look like on that Highway line?
For basic Greenlight, okay, it's going to start, well, given the current tariff situations, it is going to be at like $9.99 starts from that. And then Greenlight Premium, it will be around like $16.99. And then Highway, it will be probably be looking at like $23.99, $24.99. But that will be a limited release. And that's something that Kurt and I are working on. We're going to have numbered that chassis, but not just that. We're making something completely mind-blowing to the industry. QR code recognition. Because then even number the chassis, who knows if people can make the second one. What is the point of having a numbered chassis? Numbered chassis is basically telling you that it is exclusive. It's only one of the one. It's only one of them exists. But how can you be assured that that can be the only one? That's the question. So now we're using modern technology, like using QR code, using like NFT chip to create something that can prove it is really one of one. It is really 79 out of 2,486. Otherwise, if it says one of 3,028, how do you know that can be real? That can be one of, of 6,000. Who knows? One of 7,000. What's the proof?
So one question I have that just kind of popped up is, you gave the price points. I think you said 23 in that range for the Highway. Is that going to be more like an RLC where it's more direct to consumer and not in store, or what is that going to look like?
Yeah, so basically the strategy is going to be like this. Basic Greenlight, it will stick with mass market, accessible in Walmart, Hobby Lobby. Yeah, we work with Hobby Lobby a lot. And then for premium line, it will only be available in online hobby shops, like hobby shops, well, not online, okay, even offline. But then we try to keep it separate, because when you sell something $16, $17 in the mass market, that is not for that market. In the mass market, I think $9.99 is already the ceiling. Yeah, you have to be that good to be priced at $9.99 in a mass market. Agree? And then for the very exotic stuff, the Highway, that it will probably be directly from our online or special project that we do with customers. Yeah, it would be like that. Because the engineering, again, that we have created specifically for Highway is a lot more difficult than a regular car. Just the suspension that I've told you, yeah, was difficult to manufacture. There are much more parts. Yeah.
So do you think that's going to look like a membership, or what do you think that?
I think that will probably be a membership. Yeah, probably. Yeah, like not exactly the RLC style, but something similar.
So obviously, Greenlight is known for kind of movie collabs, and that's fine. But being that you're a diecast car company, and me and you we're car people, right? That's why we like diecast. We can get the small version of the car.
Yeah,
Do
for
you
sure.
foresee, we saw this 7-Eleven collab with Hot Wheels, right? Like 7-Eleven's big in the auto scene. And I'm not saying take the 7-Eleven, but do you see any like car scene collabs? For instance, you're releasing a lot of Hondas. There's something in Japan, No Good Racing. I think it's more of a street racing thing, so maybe you don't want to promote that. I don't know. But any cool like car culture collabs in the works or that you would like to see? And you don't have to say them so you don't show your hand, but are you going to move more car culture-ish or are you going to stick with the movie theme?
We will do car culture and movies. And obviously movies, because that is kind of like the core foundation of Greenlight. We will do more with different movies, and we will even step out from the comfort zone of just doing vehicles. We have signed it with Top Guns. We will release aircraft, diecast aircraft that is related to the movie. So yes, we will. But in the meantime, we will do a lot more with the car culture. Yes. And if you look at the new Eva Guardian, the Japanese comic that we have tried, we have sponsored some of the race, and then to put the livery of the Japanese comic Eva Guardian onto a purple Dodge Challenger. Yeah, so yes. And then we will be more involved with motorsports. And again, that's where the inspiration are from. A lot of the ideas are from. So yes.
Cool. I'm excited to see what that looks like because I do know, they're everywhere now, but when that 7-Eleven line dropped, people were going nuts. So it's, it's like you got the Armani suit, but we need to get someone to see the Armani suit. You know what
True.
I mean?
True.
And that's kind of
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Now, we've been on for a long time, and I don't want to take too much of your time. I actually have a ton more questions, and we are not going to get to all of them.
Okay, yeah. Well, until next time, yeah. Because also we are going to have a lot more new stuff, more than just Greenlight, Greenlight Premium, and also Highway. We are going to have the very first 64 scale radio control. And that's something that I think you will really like it. And then we're in the process of signing with one of the very big car franchise, movie franchise, for this project, So imagine if you can race cars through 64 scale, and then there will be light, there will be sound, and interesting, collectible plus radio control, something new. Yeah.
Now, to wrap it up here, I'll ask just a couple more things. 5 to 10 year plan. What is the plan for Greenlight? Where do you see it?
I see that Greenlight will be producing. We will stick to, like I said to you since the beginning of the interview, right? The 55 lines that we have, we will stick to that. But we, instead of jack of all trade, master of nothing, we will spend more time to refine the line. So like blue collar, this time we have announced that the express van. So there were 6-7 variants of the express van, and this is one of them. So instead of just making, we have to make different things, why don't we focus on our core blue collar series? What is it about? It's about the working class. It's about the plumber. It's about the electrician. It's about all these, right? So why don't we go start looking at topics that is related to the product series? If it's a hot pursuit, then we want to make like a hot pursuit. We want to go. So this is a police version of the express van, right? See? And not just that, it has the steps at the side. You see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this tooling is coming out 2 months later. So, and then it has the sirens light at the rooftop. And this is the original CAD file supplied by Chevy. So it's the most accurate. So if you look at the roof line.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it will be something like that. We don't want to be telling you that, in 5-10 years time we want to grow to be what. No, this is not, like I just said to you, Italian restaurant, but something that after you step into our restaurant, the environment, the people, the silverware that you use, the chair, the design of our restaurant, the food that you're going to have, it's going to make you an unforgettable experience that you will be craving for after you finish, that you will be thinking, when can I go back again? Next week or 2 weeks later? This is ultimately what we want to do. Yeah. And I think that's the core value of the brand. It's not about, I tell you that, 10 years later, we want to grow into how many double digit of growth every year and all that thing. No, that will make you turn into a different animal. Then we're just chasing for money. No, I look up to S. Tamiya-san, which sadly he passed away last month. He's not the founder of Tamiya. He is actually the second generation of Tamiya. Started off as a wooden company before Second World War. Okay, so I learned a lot from him. You don't go chase for money. You go chase for the passion, the perfection. Those things will come to you one way or the other. And look at look at him, in trade show, I bumped into him. When I go to Japan, I bumped into him. I think even before he passed away, every time when I see him, he's onto a mission. He's always doing something. He's creating stuff. And if you look at all the feedback, social media posts about him, people thank him. And I thank him too. If it wasn't him, created the 24 scale model kit, created the 4WD, the cars, created all these things, that made my childhood a lot more colorful. So instead of that, I will tell you in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, I want people, maybe they bumped into me or not, or maybe leave a comment in social media. They would come back to me and say, I have good experience collecting, playing with your car. I feel really satisfied. This is what we ultimately want to do.
Yeah, man, you almost probably took my last question, and that was beautiful. It was all that in itself was the Italian restaurant. But what I leave all of my podcasts with is, if there is one thing that you could leave with the world, it doesn't have to be diecast related. It can be diecast related. It doesn't matter. Just what does Vincent want to share with the world? What's just something you'd love to share with everyone?
I think it's the probably the curiosity. When I first got into military collectible, started off greenhorn, not knowing, and I thought I can just go easy way, buy a couple boxes of model kits and turn them into products, right? And until I realized that we cannot be copying, and I start going to museums, start digging into the source, to find out, to study, to learn the engineering side of it, the history side of it, the cultural side of it, right? And just now you were talking about JDM, why people like JDM, but have you thought about it, like USDM, American Hot Rod, started way before JDM. And when you thought the air grabber, of the Subaru, the hood scoop of the Subaru, and I used to thought, oh, the guys at Subarus are so creative, man. They created the hood scoop. But then when you look at 1970, 1960, when the Americans have already used air grabber long, long, long ago. So, and why did that happen? Because obviously, America is one of the winning country after World War II. So, and during the World War II, they have a lot of factories. They supply a lot of things. And after World War II, the economy was pretty strong, and then there were a lot of veterans coming back from the war. And then they want to have good life, because it's peaceful, right? After you're peaceful, then you think to have fun. And you start having demand for speed, for cars. But if you look at the 50s of Japan, it was all demolished, most of the places, they have to rebuild. So it doesn't come until 1960 to late 70s that they start going back to have, I think we should have some compact cars, to have fun. This is why then Toyota have 2000 GTs, GTR have the first generation and all that thing. So all these things is associated with history. And I want to, in the future, I want to put history, everything that I've researched associated with the product. We can write some stories about it, put it to the product, and let the kids know about it. And except for having the car, you can know about the underlying history. Yeah, so I think that would be the biggest thing. If you ask me, what do I want to convey to tell people, is the curiosity of knowing something, and share this curiosity to the fellow enthusiasts. Yeah, and I think that would be cool. Every time when I bumped into car collector, we can have endless conversation. We talk about cars, we talk about tanks, we talk about aircraft, we talk about engineering, talk about a piston, talk about a spark plug, geometry. When I was in Celine's place last time, when I met with Mr. Celine, Steve, And I was talking about the suspension, how he has the link, why he want to do it that way to modify it. And that gives a better track performance. So there is always something behind all this design. And it's, yeah. So I think this will be interesting to share. Yeah.
Well, I hope we can link up again because, like I said, I think I asked maybe not even half of my questions. So I would love to link up again, but I don't want to waste too much of your time. I do
Okay.
want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I am very excited to see what you start pumping out.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yeah. Looking forward one day we'll meet you in person. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be at SuperCon in March of 2026, but I will be there. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be there too. Yeah. So, okay.
we'll link up
I'll
then.
look at you this time. Okay. Great
Well, thank
stuff.
you so much for being here.
Thank you
You're
very
killing
much.
the game.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute blast having you on. And guys, thank you so much for watching. And be on the lookout for Greenlight's new lines coming. You've seen it. You've heard it. It is going to change the game, and you don't want to miss it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you very much. Bye.
But the board of the team refuse releases exclusive views. Raging Diecast is breaking the news.